Hello there and welcome to the video. So this year I have a goal of becoming a better darkroom printer. Darkroom printing is easy to learn but hard to master. And I must admit, in the past I've kind of been brute forcing it. I can get a decent print, but I have to mess around quite a bit in the darkroom before getting there. And I want to take control of that. And I have a couple of ideas of how to do that. Welcome to the darkroom. It's time to try and print an image. And the one I've selected for today is from last year's spring photo trip. I haven't actually tried printing any images from that trip yet, so it is high time to do so, especially as I'm about to embark on this year's spring trip next week. Anyhow, this session is all about getting the basics right and make it repeatable. And to achieve this, I'm going to try three things. First, I'm going to do f-stop printing, something I've been dabbling with before. But today I brought some charts with me. Sexy, I know, but this will help me set the exposure times according to f-stops without having to pull out the calculator. Secondly, I'm going to try and do localized test strips with this very simple DIY contraption. And thirdly, I brought some ND filters with me, because you see, this enlarger my Big Bertha for 4x5. I do get fairly short exposure times with that enlarger. So to help with that, ND filters will come in handy. With that said, let's get to printing. I'm going to do a localized test strips in f-stop increments. And the charts I brought with me out here, well, there are different times and how to adjust them according to f-stops. But I also just printed out, well, a standard test strip series from 2 up to 16 seconds in half and third stops increments. However, I did notice I forgot, one stop on the first stops, so I'll just do a half stop increment test strip to start. So, localized test strips, a really good idea, and I can see how this will come in handy in the future. However, my contraption, made out of 2 pieces of cardboard with a hole in one of them, kind of worked, but was fiddly to use out in the darkroom, and I kind of got the sizing wrong. So I kind of have to figure out a better solution in the future. For now, I'll just have to stick to normal test strips. First session, okay results, and more importantly, I felt like I had better control out in the darkroom. I truly believe that f-stop printing is the key for me to achieve that control in the darkroom. If you're curious, f-stop printing is a fairly simple concept. Just adjust exposures according to f-stops, just as you would with your camera, either by adjusting the aperture or the exposure times. Out in the darkroom, it's often preferable to adjust the exposure time. And to do so, in full stops, it's really easy, just double the times. For instance, 4 to 8 seconds, that's one full stop. However, if you want to do partial stops, that's when it gets a bit tricky. For instance, it's really easy to think if I want a half stop between 4 and 8 seconds, just split the difference, and that gives you 6 seconds. That's not completely true though. If you actually calculate the half stop between 4 and 8 seconds, you get 5.7 seconds. A small difference, but a difference. And the longer the exposure times gets, the greater that difference will become. And that's the reason why I brought those charts with me out in the darkroom. And those charts are really easy to find if you just Google f-stop printing. And that gives you a series of different exposure times and how to adjust them in half or third stops. I'll make them available on my webpage as well. And besides those charts, I also had a couple of standard test strips that I like to do, where I do a normal test strip and cover up parts of the paper in increments. And to do so in half stops, for instance, I start with 2 seconds for the whole test strip, cover up a part, do 0.8, cover up a part, do 1.2, etc, etc. And to remember all those numbers out in the darkroom, that's over my mental capacity. It's really useful to bring out those charts in the darkroom. If we look at the print from this session, I'm not completely satisfied. The highlights are a tad too hot and the shadows a bit hesitant. A localized test strip might actually have prevented this, because you see the key to this print is that rock in the foreground. So localized test strip of that, I might have gotten a better print out of this session. As it stands, it needs a bit more work. And I wanted to do a bit of experiment with this somewhat failed print. I wanted to try some tea staining to see if I could get some more warmth out of the highlights. Only the finest Lipton tea will do, not sponsored. I used my very finely calibrated finger thermometer to make sure that the tea was at optimal temperature for staining. Seriously, I have no idea. I just figured that hot but not boiling would be good enough. I must say that tea stain in the print really gave it a nice warm glow. I tried combining this with some selenium toner, the idea being that the selenium would affect the shadows more and the tea would affect the highlights more. Kind of a split toning thing going on. I'm not sure that the selenium did much to the finished look though. So I do think I need to read up more and do more test, more experiment and grow as a printer. But for now, the print looks better, but I'm not satisfied. I needed another session out in the dark.
Också utreder exakt vad det är som har hänt och ser över vad de eventuellt kunde gjort annorlunda. Både P4 och Malmöhus.
En stor vattenläcka skapade trafikkaos tidigt på onsdagsmorgonen i Helsingborg.
Det var givet att det kommer ta hela natten, men det blir ju hela dagen. Ikväll så jag fick.
Tatjana Kirieva på Malmöhus. Snart dimmer det orangea kuvertet ner på din hängmatta eller i din digitala vegetål.
This second section I started with another straight print, filter 3.5, but I extended the exposure times with half a stop, giving me an overall darker print. And it looks a lot better, but I'm still not happy. It doesn't quite sing to me. So I decided to try split grade printing. So, split grade printing. It is this technique where you kind of focus in on the highlights for themselves and shadows for themselves, and combining the two into one final print. I'm not going to go into too much details of how to do split grade printing because I'm fairly new to it myself, but this is how I did it this time around. I started with a fairly large test strip. On one axis I did a series of increments in half stop with the number 5 filter, that is for the shadow areas. And on top of that, on the other axis, I did a series of increments in half stops again with the filter 00, that is for the highlight area. Because the idea is that the filter 5 will pretty much only affect the shadows, and the filter 00 will only affect the highlight area. And then you combine the two into one. And by doing these on the same test strip, I can quite quickly see what combination I like the best and select that. I then did a swatch to kind of double check that it looked okay at that rock in the foreground. And then I committed to the final print. And now the print starts looking good. It starts to sing to me. Just one more thing to fix. On the right side of the print, it looks a tad too bright to my eyes. So what I did to mitigate that was I burnt it using the filter 5 with half a stop. And that will primarily affect the shadows, leaving the highlights there. And now it starts looking like a good quality print. These two techniques, the split gray printing and f-stop printing, I feel like they are really powerful, especially when you combine the two. And I do think I need to master these to become a good printer. I'm not saying they are for everyone or every print, but I did feel like they gave me more control out in the darkroom, something I've been craving. And besides that, I will continue reading, studying and doing more experimenting, like with the tea staining. And remember, the difference between science and messing around is taking notes. And that's how I intend on growing as a darkroom printer. With that said, thank you so much for watching. I see you next time. Take care and bye.